The investigation into the tragic deaths of Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa took a chilling turn when the FBI uncovered a terrifying discovery within the couple's secluded mansion. For weeks, their deaths had puzzled investigators, with little evidence to suggest foul play, but a recent breakthrough changed everything. The discovery of an unusual and alarming piece of forensic evidence led the FBI to reconsider everything they thought they knew about the case. What once appeared to be a tragic yet straightforward case of accidental death was suddenly clouded with dark implications. This new discovery revealed that their isolated lifestyle may have concealed far more sinister forces at work. The seclusion of Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa, a chilling tale of isolation and tragedy. Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa seemed to live an ideal life. Their marriage, though marked by its rare public appearances, radiated serenity. Hackman, the Oscar-winning actor celebrated for his gritty performances in films such as The French Connection and Unforgiven, had carved out a life far from the Hollywood spotlight. He married Arakawa, a soft-spoken classical pianist known for her gentle nature, and together they retreated into the peaceful hills of Santa Fe, New Mexico. Their sprawling estate, perched high above the city, was not only a reflection of their wealth, but also a symbol of their desire to remain distant from the hustle and bustle of the entertainment industry. Surrounded by acres of land, their mansion was securely gated and privately nestled amongst the rolling hills. This secluded lifestyle, however, would later become the very thing that raised suspicion when tragedy struck. Their seemingly perfect life, away from the media's prying eyes, appeared to be a sanctuary. Yet, when the couple's sudden disappearance was followed by a grim discovery, the idyllic nature of their retreat was shattered. What had once been the picture of tranquility would soon unravel into a mystery that would consume both the authorities and the public alike. What had happened behind the high walls of the Hackman's mansion, and why had their peaceful retreat ended in such a chilling tragedy? The quiet life of Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa. Gene Hackman had earned worldwide recognition for his acting. He was not a household name simply for his fame, but for the authenticity and intensity he brought to his characters. Yet, despite his success, Hackman had always been a private man. His desire for privacy was well known, and many of his colleagues often remarked on his reluctance to engage in the often absurd fanfare of Hollywood. After his retirement from acting, Hackman became even more reclusive, opting for the quietude of Santa Fe over the bright lights of the city. His fame didn't draw him back into the public eye, but rather reinforced his commitment to a peaceful, isolated existence. Betsy Arakawa, his wife, complemented this retreat with her own sense of serenity. She was a pianist with a deep love for her art and a devotion to her family. Their partnership was marked by a shared sense of mutual respect, quiet companionship, and a profound love for solitude. Together, they built a life far removed from the public attention that Hackman had garnered throughout his career. The house they had built in Santa Fe was not just a home, but a fortress. Designed to blend harmoniously with the surrounding desert landscape, it featured expansive terraces, sweeping views of the hills, and lush gardens. Their privacy was further reinforced by the towering walls that enclosed the property, ensuring that even their neighbors would rarely get a glimpse of the couple. For years, the Hackmans' existence was one of complete privacy. It was not uncommon for them to go days or even weeks without being seen by anyone outside their home. The couple kept a very small circle of friends, shying away from social gatherings or the media. Despite their wealth, the Hackmans were not interested in the social scene that comes with fame. Their lifestyle was quiet and simple, defined by an appreciation for their home, nature, and each other's company. However, as time passed, Even their most loyal friends began to notice an unsettling pattern. The couple had always been reclusive, but now they seemed to have disappeared altogether. It was as if they had vanished, and no one noticed until it was far too late. The fateful discovery. The first signs of something being wrong came when a routine maintenance worker visited the property. He had been responsible for maintaining the grounds for years and was accustomed to the Hackmans' solitary ways. However, on this day, he found something troubling. The gate that was always shut had been left slightly ajar, and when he knocked on the front door, there was no response. A sense of unease crept over him, and he proceeded inside. Upon entering the house, the silence was immediately overwhelming. The usual warmth of the mansion, the hum of the refrigerator, the sounds of life were gone. The air was thick with stillness. As the worker moved deeper into the house, it was clear that something was wrong. The halls were pristine, as they always were, but there was no sign of the couple. It was only when he made his way to the mudroom that he discovered the unimaginable. Gene Hackman's body was lying on the floor, close to his cane and a pair of sunglasses. His condition indicated he had been dead for several days, with early signs of mummification already present. The image of the once vibrant actor lying motionless in such an unsettling state was a stark contrast to his public persona. Hackman, a man known for his strength and presence, had been reduced to an almost unrecognizable figure. The worker's heart sank. This was no ordinary death. It was a gruesome and haunting discovery. But the discovery did not end there. As the worker continued through the house, he found Betsy Arakawa's lifeless body in a bathroom. She was near a space heater, her body positioned in a way that suggested she had been seeking warmth or comfort before her death. On the counter beside her was an open prescription bottle, and scattered pills were strewn across the sink. The scene painted a grim picture. Was this a tragic overdose, or had something darker taken place? The lack of visible struggle, broken windows, or signs of forced entry suggested that whatever had occurred inside the mansion had not been the result of violent confrontation. The bodies, while lifeless, were not disturbed in any way. The house itself remained locked and secure. The sense of unease deepened as the investigation continued. An unsettling absence of conventional signs. One of the most perplexing aspects of the deaths was the complete absence of conventional signs that investigators typically rely on when trying to determine the cause of death. In most cases, there are obvious markers that suggest foul play, such as signs of violence, forced entry, or bloodshed. But in the Hackmans' case, there were none of these usual indicators. The house, though eerily silent, was otherwise undisturbed. No fingerprints, no signs of forced entry, no broken windows. The only oddity was the open door that led into the house, but even that did not reveal any signs of break-ins. The lack of any physical evidence made it nearly impossible to draw any conclusions about what had occurred inside the mansion. Investigators could not help but wonder how the deaths had gone unnoticed for so long. In a world where social media and constant communication have become the norm, how had no one reached out to the Hackmans in over a week? The couple's lifestyle, while reclusive, was not to the point of complete isolation. Friends, family, and neighbors knew them as quiet, but not entirely unreachable people. Yet, their sudden disappearance for nearly 2 weeks went unnoticed. How could a couple so deeply embedded in the fabric of the local community simply vanish without a trace? This was the first clue that perhaps the answers were more complex than anyone had imagined. The role of medication and possible overdose. As the investigation unfolded, one of the most significant clues came from the discovery of an open prescription bottle next to Betsy Arakawa's body. The pills scattered on the bathroom counter suggested the possibility of an overdose. This discovery was alarming, yet it was far from conclusive. Could it have been an accident? Was it a case of an improperly managed prescription? Or was this the result of a more deliberate act? Investigators delved into the specifics of the medication, seeking to determine whether the pills had been prescribed to Betsy or if they had been tampered with. The idea of a medication-related death added another layer of complexity to the case. Was it an accidental overdose, or was there something more sinister at play? The lack of a struggle or signs of panic in the room made it difficult to determine the exact cause. Forensic experts were particularly interested in the nature of the medication. They sought to determine if the pills could have been a factor in Betsy's death, or if there was a deeper, darker explanation. Was it possible that the medication was linked to a larger issue, such as an intentional overdose? Or were the pills simply a symptom of an underlying issue, perhaps a personal crisis, that had led to the tragedy? The delayed discovery and missed connections. Another layer of mystery in the case was the delayed discovery of the deaths. The Hackmans had been missing for nearly 2 weeks before anyone thought to check on them. Their neighbors, accustomed to the couple's secluded lifestyle, hadn't been alarmed by their absence at first. However, as days passed without any word from them, concern began to mount. It was unusual for the Hackmans to be out of contact for so long, especially given their close-knit relationships with a few select friends and family members. The fact that no one had checked on them during this time was deeply unsettling. In today's world of instant communication and constant connectivity, how could the couple's absence go unnoticed for so long? This delayed discovery became one of the most troubling aspects of the case. Investigators began to wonder whether the couple's reclusive lifestyle had inadvertently contributed to their deaths being overlooked. Had they become too isolated, too withdrawn from the outside world? Had this isolation led to their tragic fate? FBI's involvement and forensic anomalies. As the investigation unfolded, forensic experts uncovered several anomalies that led to the involvement of the FBI. The absence of any obvious signs of foul play, combined with the eerie silence of the scene, made the case particularly difficult to crack. The FBI's advanced forensic teams were called in to examine every minute detail, looking for clues that could point to a cause of death. Their expertise in criminal investigations allowed them to approach the case from a new perspective. One of the most perplexing discoveries came when the FBI team found strange forensic anomalies that hinted at something far darker than a simple health crisis or accidental death. These findings deepened the mystery and led investigators to question whether the deaths of Gene Hackman, Betsy Arakawa, and their dog were the result of a deliberate act, something far more sinister than a tragic accident. As the FBI's investigation continued, it became clear that the answers to this case would not come easily. The more they uncovered, the more complex the story became, and the more questions emerged. Were the deaths connected to the couple's lifestyle, or was something more deliberate at play? The FBI's involvement turned the investigation into a full-scale inquiry, and with each new revelation, the mystery surrounding the deaths grew darker. A darker truth behind the tragedy. What began as a seemingly straightforward case of accidental deaths quickly evolved into an intricate and unnerving mystery. The lack of typical signs of foul play, combined with the unsettling details of the crime scene, forced investigators to reconsider their assumptions. Was the couple's seclusion merely a coincidence, or had it played a role in their tragic deaths? As the investigation expanded, new theories began to emerge, but none of them offered definitive answers. The deaths of Gene Hackman, Betsy Arakawa, and their dog are a chilling reminder of how isolation, secrecy, And even the most seemingly mundane details can conceal something far more sinister. The Hackmans' once idyllic life was now viewed through a lens of suspicion, and their peaceful retreat had become the epicenter of a tragic and complex investigation that continues to unfold. The investigation into their deaths is ongoing, and each new discovery raises more questions than answers. Could the couple's reclusive nature have played a role in their fate? Was there a deeper, darker story behind their deaths? As the truth begins to surface, it is becoming increasingly clear that the Hackmans' story is not just one of tragedy, but one shrouded in mystery and darkness. The medications and possible overdose, a devastating clue. One of the most perplexing and unsettling aspects of the tragic deaths of Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa was the presence of medication-related evidence found at the scene. The discovery took place in the bathroom where Betsy Arakawa's body was found, in a location that held an almost haunting, eerie sense of finality. As investigators combed through the details of the scene, they were met with a grim reality. An open prescription bottle was discovered on the bathroom counter, with pills scattered around it. This immediately suggested the possibility of an accidental overdose. At first glance, the situation seemed like a tragic, yet plausible explanation. Perhaps Betsy Arakawa had been facing some health-related crisis, something that led her to inadvertently overdose on medication, and her husband, Gene Hackman, had simply been unable to reach her in time to provide assistance. However, the scene was not as straightforward as it seemed. Upon closer examination, investigators realized that there was something deeply troubling about the circumstances. The bathroom, though it was grim and had the tragic air of finality, did not display the typical signs of an accidental overdose. The lack of visible distress or panic was immediate and disturbing. In most cases, individuals experiencing an overdose are often in a state of severe discomfort, confusion, or agitation. But in Betsy's case, there was no indication of any such emotional or physical turmoil. There were no signs of a struggle, nor was there any evidence that Betsy had been in a state of panic or frantic desperation before her death. What made the scene even more disturbing was the positioning of a space heater near her body. This detail suggested a sense of discomfort. Perhaps she had been trying to find warmth or solace from the cold in her final moments. The heater, placed so close to her lifeless form, seemed to tell a story of someone seeking comfort in the face of a health crisis, or worse. Someone who had reached a point of exhaustion from whatever unknown struggle they had been enduring. And yet, the scattered pills on the counter added another layer to the mystery. The pills seemed out of place in this sterile, calm bathroom. Were they truly the result of a medical issue that spiraled out of control? Or was there something more to their presence? The unusual position of the pills, scattered haphazardly, suggested a rush, almost as if someone had desperately tried to manage a situation in a way that wasn't typical. The delayed discovery, a tragic oversight. One of the most baffling elements of the Hackmans' deaths was the delayed discovery of their bodies. For nearly 2 weeks, no one had checked on the couple. The Hackmans were known for their quiet, reclusive lifestyle, but this silence was far longer than anyone expected. Their lack of communication with family and friends was initially seen as just another part of their private existence. However, as the days stretched on and no one heard from them, the concerns of neighbors and friends grew steadily stronger. Gene and Betsy's remote location in Santa Fe made it easier for them to remain unnoticed, but the prolonged absence without any word from them seemed out of character. The couple was known to keep to themselves, but they had never fully isolated themselves from others. Their friends and neighbors, while accustomed to the couple's quiet nature, began to wonder if something had gone terribly wrong. Betsy and Gene had been in regular contact with family and friends prior to their deaths, so the sudden and complete lack of communication raised suspicions. How could a couple so seemingly engaged with the world simply vanish without a trace? Neighbors who lived in close proximity to the Hackmans began to notice that something was wrong. They had not seen the couple in several days, and when no one came to check on them, they started to feel a growing sense of unease. The Hackmans had always maintained a polite and respectful distance from their neighbors, but this sudden silence felt different. The reality that they hadn't heard any word from the couple for such an extended period of time began to feel more like a mystery than a simple absence. The longer the silence stretched on, the more unsettling it became. In a modern world where technology connects people at all times, it seemed odd that the couple's disappearance had not been immediately noticed. Friends and family, who had been in touch with them regularly, began to question whether their loved ones were simply too private for anyone to notice their absence, or if something more sinister had taken place. The delay in discovering the couple's fate would haunt those who had known them, leaving a lingering question. Why did it take so long for anyone to check in on them? This delay in discovery became one of the most troubling aspects of the case. It raised the possibility that their seclusion, which had been a hallmark of their life together, may have ultimately contributed to the tragedy. Had the Hackmans' retreat into isolation allowed them to slip away unnoticed? Had their withdrawal from the outside world, which they had once embraced as a means of escape, ultimately sealed their tragic end? The FBI's involvement, a deeper look into forensic anomalies. As the investigation unfolded, forensic experts uncovered several anomalies that deepened the intrigue surrounding the deaths of Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa. The absence of any conventional signs of foul play, such as blood, forced entry, or signs of violence, was highly unusual. These atypical findings drew the attention of the FBI, who became involved in the case as it began to take on a more complex and disturbing nature. The FBI's expertise in criminal investigations, particularly in high-profile cases, added a new layer of depth to the investigation. Their advanced forensic capabilities, which included the use of specialized techniques to analyze evidence, provided fresh insights into the nature of the deaths. The lack of clear signs of violence suggested that there was either an intentional effort to hide the truth, or that the deaths were the result of an unexpected, yet still tragic, chain of events. Forensic teams worked tirelessly to process every detail of the crime scene. They examined the layout of the mansion, searched for hidden evidence, and interviewed anyone who may have had contact with the Hackmans in the days leading up to their deaths. The investigation began to unfold like a complex puzzle, with each piece of evidence hinting at something far darker than anyone could have predicted. As the investigation progressed, a number of new theories began to emerge. Some experts believed the deaths could have been the result of an accidental health crisis, while others theorized that the couple had been victims of a carefully concealed murder. The lack of conventional signs of foul play led some to speculate that someone with knowledge of the couple's lifestyle had manipulated the situation in a way that would be difficult to trace. These theories only added to the confusion surrounding the deaths and drove the investigation into even more obscure and complicated territories. A darker truth. Behind the tragedy, the unanswered questions. What initially seemed like a simple case of a tragic health crisis quickly evolved into a tangled and unsettling mystery. The lack of clear evidence pointing to the cause of death, coupled with the strange circumstances surrounding the deaths of Gene Hackman, Betsy Arakawa, and their dog, raised numerous questions that seemed impossible to answer. Was it a case of accidental overdose, an isolated health crisis, or something far more sinister? As the investigation continued, each new revelation seemed to deepen the sense of unease. The Hackmans' isolated lifestyle, combined with the lack of any definitive conclusions, left the case hanging in the balance. As experts and investigators pondered the truth behind the tragedy, one thing became clear. The story of Gene Hackman, Betsy Arakawa, and their unfortunate fate was more complex and darker than anyone could have imagined.